If a gladiator gets upset, does that make him a madiator? Look, if that's the best I got, if you want to turn this video off for like an episode of Game Grumps or something, I couldn't even blame you.
There is no meme. This is just a threat.
Welcome back to the series, where I take a look at Fire Emblem tropes that happen across multiple games and highlight how the series takes the same idea and does it differently. This time, I'm going to be talking about an ex-Pitfighter slave who's saved by the actions of a young noble child and is able to live his life on the straight and narrow. Now that sounds like an oddly specific thing to have happen more than once, but I assure you, it happens only twice. The first one we're going to look at is Ogma from Arcanea. Now Ogma is probably a character a lot of people have seen, but not a lot of people really know who he is. No one's really played Shadow Dragon in the fandom, and Arcanea kind of gets overlooked despite how hugely important it is. So I'm just gonna give Ogma's story and then explain what it means for the characters involved. Ogma was once a young noble of, I think it was like Grust or something, and due to political upheaval and the fact that living in Arcanea is hell for most people, his family is killed and he is forced to live in Norda as a slave gladiator, killing other men for the entertainment of rich people, until one day he and his fellow gladiators decided that being a slave absolutely sucks, so they're just going to leave. Ogma stayed behind as a distraction to help his other gladiators escape, but he wasn't able to escape himself, and the men who were in charge of the gladiators really didn't like that there was a slave escape, and decided to make an example out of Ogma the only way they knew how.
Okay, let's kill him. Let's kill this guy. Let's beat him to death with hammers.
While the execution was going on, though, the young princess of Talis, Sheeta, stepped in to save Ogma's life. Why was she there? Norda is in the mainland of Arcanea. Sheeta is a princess of an island country far to the east. What was she doing there? Is that just part of the girl experience in Arcanea? You talk about the latest boy band, you put on cute makeup, you go see public executions. I don't know, I'm a guy, maybe that's just part of womanhood and I don't understand it. And because she saved his life, Ogma was appointed her personal bodyguard, and he has had unwavering loyalty to her ever since. So, what does this story mean for the characters involved? Like, it's a nice story, but what does it show? Well, it actually really helps Sheeta's character. It lets you know that she was always like she was. You see her in Marth's story, and she's talking to people, swooping in and trying to help people who are just in a crappy situation, like Castor, Jake, etc. And this story kind of shows that she's always been like this. And it's a nice bit of characterization for that. And for Ogma, it helps show why he's so loyal to Talis' crown. You don't necessarily need to know why a knight or a mercenary is what they are. A lot of the times the backstory is just, the knight's a knight because that's his job. And you never really need anything more than that. But Ogma having it does help out his character quite a bit. It makes him stand out more as he has this story, and it gives you a reason to care about him and Sheeta. It also kind of just shows how messed up Arcanea is. Like, the Norda slave market is a thing that existed long before the start of the story. Linde was in there, for anyone that doesn't know about Arcanea stories. And the fact that it's just so casually in someone's backstory helps flesh out the idea that that's a problem, a long-standing problem that Marth has to deal with, because I don't think you ever see him deal with it. Like, yes, Marth tells the one slave owner, hey, you're stopping this, but that's not the only place there that has slaves. It's kind of like showing the problems with Arcanea that Marth has to come to deal with, eventually. So, it's just a solid backstory. It's not exactly making some grand statement on some real-life topic, other than slaves are bad, which I don't think that's exactly treading new ground, but Like, it's not addressing classism like a lot of Three Houses supports. It's not addressing alcoholism like Astolfo, or the meaning of life and what it means to serve a cause worth fighting for like Iran. There are other characters in Arcanea even, that you can look for and find a lot of value in. But I do think this story helps the characters that it's trying to help, and it's just a nice story, you know? Not everything needs 37 pages of literary analysis to work. Sometimes a short, sweet, simple story is all you need, and that's what this story does. So, who's the other character that does this exact thing? It's time to whip out the Dieck. And to talk about Dieck from Fire Emblem 6. Look, if you're too highbrow for Dieck jokes, just think long and hard about what made you such a hard ass, and know that one day you'll get what's coming to you. Dieck, like all of FE6 honestly, is heavily inspired by Arcanea, to the point where it's almost plagiarism, but it does it in a way that makes it its own thing, and can stand on its own merits. So, what is Dieck's version of the gladiator-slave backstory? Well, much like Ogma, Dieck started as a gladiator slave, being a pit fighter, killing men, all that good stuff. However, one day, Dieck was set to be faced off against a lion, which is noticeably a bit harder to kill than just some random dude from Bern. Now, while this gladiator fight between a lion was happening, Klein, the son of Penton Louise, fell into the gladiator pit. And, first of all, why did Penton Louise bring a child to a gladiator fight? Like, is watching men get mauled to death by a lion actually just something that happens? Like, it's a coming-of-age ceremony? Why was a child there? And second of all, how the hell did he fall in? Was Penn dangling him over the edge like Michael Jackson or something? Like, why? Why do children in these universes find themselves in these situations? Anyways, though Dieck already had his hands full well enough with the lion, he still managed to intervene and save Klein's life. Though it did cost him his beautiful face. All those scars on him, came from this lion. But he did save the child, and he did beat the shit out of that lion so bad, you'd swear it was a Thanksgiving football game. As thanks for this, Pent bought Dieck from the slavers, and had him work instead in his own home, where Dieck would go on to befriend the young Klein and be treated like a second son to Penton Louise. Or third son, I guess. FE6 didn't think of Urk yet. But Dieck noticed that Penton Louise were getting a lot of sideways glances from the Etrian nobles, because treating a slave like a human being, that's just unheard of. A human isn't a human, that's a slave, he is garbage. So eventually Dieck just bought his own freedom and left, which, I'll admit, I'm not a history major. I don't know if that's a common thing Fire Emblem's based on European medieval stories, so I don't know if that's a thing in European slavery where you can just buy your freedom. That doesn't sound right to me, but whatever. So Dieck left, leaving Klein and the rest of the Relgay family incredibly confused as to why he left. So, what does this story tell us? Much like Arcanea and Ogma's story, Eleb is just a fucked up place. It's not very enjoyable to be in, and there's a lot of characters whose entire motivations stem off of that. All the Ilian mercenaries, Fiora, Flora, Farina, Zealot, Noah, Trek, Juno, Thea, Shauna, etc. All of them are about how life sucks. So having this story, again, just be something that casually happened with the slavery and the Pitfighters helps lead into the idea that not everything in the continent is peachy keen, and the nobles of the land that you're controlling, like Roy, Ellawood, etc., have a lot of problems to worry about. It also does wonders for Dieck's character, because on the surface, he just looks like the calm, collected, badass commander. It doesn't look like he'd be the kind of guy to abandon a family because of fear over how they're interacting with their social status. That doesn't seem like something he would even acknowledge exists, let alone care enough about that he would abandon a comfortable home life. And the support with Klein and Dieck actually does have a very nice ending, where after Klein's like, look, we don't care about that, Pent and Louise could not give less of a shit about social customs than you can possibly imagine. So Dieck agrees to go see Pent and acknowledge that, hey, I care about you, sorry I'm left, and make up. And the last thing about this support that's interesting is not really in the context of FE6 itself, but in the context of FE7, this was the only bit of character about Pent that they had to go off of. So, when they were writing Pent and Louise for FE7, this story was all they had. The idea that Pent was a man who would just buy a slave, raise him as a son, and then be like, oh, you bought your freedom? Good luck, but where'd you go? We loved you. So it's kind of interesting to think about how they made Pent's character based on this one support. So it's got a lot going for it, and again, despite being an Ogma knockoff, Dieck was literally just Ogma again, right down to being in control of a group of fighters. Like, FE6 just takes from Arcanea a lot. And a lot of people like to use that as a reason for why FE6 isn't that good. I think it does enough interesting with the stuff it rips off from Arcanea that it stands on its own merits. So, let that be the lesson here. Just because FE6 is plagiarism doesn't mean it's not without merit. This entire video was like a fucked up version of the H-Bomber Guy video. Plagiarism is fine as long as you're cool with it. Please don't actually let that be the lesson you take from this. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'm sure you're asking, or thinking, which one's cooler? Who's better, Ogma or Dieck? Doesn't matter, Uncle Ben. Zaid from Vestoria Saga is a better gladiator fighter than both of them. Haga wins again.